Hello, fellow film tours. Welcome back to the Oscars Project, where we discuss every Best Picture winner from 1960 to current day. And with a husky voice, this episode, we'll be discussing the 1986 Best Picture winner, Platoon. This is directed by Oliver Stone and also Arnold Coppelson. The runners-up that year were Children of a Lesser God, Hannah and Her Sisters, The Mission, and A Room with a View. And I like to start off every episode with a question to kick things off. And this week, I was curious if the what hits harder in this movie, is it the combat scenes or the scenes of the soldiers not in combat but knowing that they're broken?
Knowing that they're broken. Yeah. Um, does that include the scenes that were involving non-combatants? Uh,
Yeah.
that's those are the ones that really, I think, really hurt. I think that those are the ones that made it tough to watch at times when, just how some of these guys got out of control and, weren't able to reel in their baser instincts, I guess, and the that was some powerful stuff. I know when this came out in '86 or '85 when it came out, there was a lot of discussion around it,
Hmm.
and there was a lot of discussion around um the some people called it unpatriotic due to the showing the reality of the combat on the ground in Vietnam, that or what Oliver Stone portrayed as reality as combat on the ground down there, where soldiers were, he portrayed soldiers doing drugs. He portrayed them doing despicable acts in some cases, and a lot of people didn't want to see that at the time. They didn't want to see American soldiers in those kind of compromising situations. And so I think now that we have a much further view, we're much further away from that time, and we're much further away from the Vietnam time period where we've grown up a little bit. We can take this kind of stuff now. We can take criticism, and we can now look at this movie in a different light, I think, and see it as a piece of the culture of the times that Stone was portraying in the '80s. And as tough it is to see some of those scenes that were in there, um, I think the film has stood the test of time in order to um, give us a viewpoint on what was going on back then.
Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, yeah. My I don't know how many times I've seen Platoon now, but the first time I've seen it maybe 5 or 6 years, something like that. And I said to Jared on Friday that I'd forgotten just how upsetting it is in multiple stages. It's incredibly upsetting in a lot of ways, and like I say, I think for me the more upsetting part of it is the people that are trying to not be involved in the war. The impact that it has on their lives, especially the farm people, whether they have been involved, coerced, whatever it is. There is definitely a feeling that they would rather not be involved in this at all, even if they are involved. They just sort of want to make their rice and do that kind of stuff. And so the impact of that, and then as you quite rightly said, Jared, he shines a light on things that I don't think people really shone light on beforehand, in terms of, like, not just about the acts that the young men were doing, but their schooling, their background, their intelligence, all of that kind of stuff, the sort of backgrounds that they came from when they were thrust into this horrible situation, and how base instincts come out at that stage, and yes, he portrays it. I don't think he judges. I think he does his best not to judge the men. I think the only person that comes out as evil is Tom Berenger's character in a lot of ways. But even his character is shown as broken by the circumstances they are, and he's been broken and his God complex. The two things together seem difficult to kind of put together. So I just found the entire film upsetting. But the only thing that's surprising about it is the fact that Charlie Sheen doesn't die at the end.
Yeah.
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 There's definitely some very disturbing scenes as far as the more intimate moments, the more kind of quiet moments when they're in the bar and they're singing along. That struck me as even though it seemed like they were having a good time and that they were kind of blowing off some steam. They're laughing on the outside, but they're all dying on the inside. And with the song playing in the background, was it "Tracks of My Tears"? That was just a very impactful scene. I did not expect it to hit that hard. So
Mhm.
very well done.
Yeah, yeah. It was, I was, I was talking to Chris yesterday about this, that the movie seemed to be a real step up in production value as far as, how the movie looked and sounded. I thought the sound editing was spectacular.
Mm.
I really, really, um, was impressed by it. Like, I could hear every gasp of every soldier, every creak of their uniform when they were moving, but it wasn't muddled, it was very clear, and even even when the gunfire was happening, yeah, sure, it was loud like gunfire is supposed to be, but it wasn't overwhelming we've seen in a lot of movies where the explosions are just so loud that you end up turning the TV down, then you can't hear anything else. But I just thought the editing and the whole package of the production was spectacularly done, and it's it it raised the film up for me from when because I seen it well over 30 years ago or whatever, and back then I didn't think that much of it. I was probably just more disturbed by some of the stuff that was happening on the screen, and I never really looked back. But seeing it now and seeing the artistry behind the filming and the just the sound editing and the editing quality of the film was really a step up, especially over the last 5 or 6 movies that we've seen. I thought this was next level for the time period.
I think all of them muted, Chris. There you go.
Yes, we discussed this very briefly a day or so ago, but there definitely is a sense that Oliver Stone belongs to the next generation of directors, if that makes sense, in terms of what he was doing. Even when you read about this approach to the film, about how realistic he wanted to make it, he had an attention to detail that was sitting outside of where he put the camera, where the sound was going. It was a very intentional piece, and it is one of those projects, I think, for Stone that he sort of had in his eye. He had started to write it or written it in 1970 something at that stage, and before it got to this stage. And so it's interesting. And of course, I love to pipe it on in this, but it has the ultimate banger in terms of music, in terms of that thing. So Barbara's Adagio for strings that is used from start to finish throughout the entire piece as one of the most emotional pieces of music, and he uses it in multiple times in ways to portray different things, the same kind of motif that goes through. And I sort of thought about it in comparison to like Chariots of Fire, which has that one song that basically bookends the movie and isn't really used much the way through it, whereas this one, he has this piece of music and he uses it to effect as part of the storytelling the whole way through, and it's incredibly effective at doing that. Yeah.
I think Oliver Stone is brilliant. I think he has some. Well, he can be brilliant. He has some odd movies, but I think he has some definitely some skills on putting a film together and making it impactful. I was surprised. I was expecting things to have kind of flashbacks or like a more of a psychedelic feel to it, to this one, because of, watching like JFK or, was it U-Turn, some other films that he's done that are very frantic. This is pretty I didn't remember any of that really. It was very kind of grounded and focused on the characters, not jumping around back and forth. I expected flashbacks in their past or other past battles or something, but I think he also does a good job in kind of, we have there's the enemy, and there's also the enemy within your
Yeah,
own team. So this
yeah,
infighting where you not only have to worry about the enemy, you have to also have to worry about the person next to you who's supposed to be looking out for you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was definitely a Heart of Darkness type journey for
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these characters in here, and it's interesting because when the film starts out, there's kind of this rejoicing in their youth and their promise in themselves and the possibilities of what they're able to achieve just by there's this real beaming joy in the youth of the characters. And then there's this kind of welcome to the jungle aspect of, you have the rites of initiation of the new people and stuff like that, and going through that whole thing, which is pretty common when new people are joining a unit, a close knit unit, that you would have those rites and stuff like that that they have to go through, and that's a part of youth and a part of growing up, and um, it's really given to us as that eventual blending of these new people into the units that were there. And I thought one of the lines that Charlie Sheen delivered kind of encapsulated that feeling. He said, I just want to be anonymous. I want to be an anonymous part of this. And that is the like the blending, the brainwashing of soldiers becoming a unit, a single thing um to be effective. And the irony is that this journey into the heart of darkness that they go through actually eventually tears them apart and makes them more barbaric as time goes on. And the as the horrors of war slowly wear down the very thing that they were trying to do to become anonymous unit, they start separating into individual monsters as the film goes on. I thought the transition of that was just very well done throughout the film, and I really liked. You could just see that transition and just about all the characters that were introduced to us. So it was pretty impressive.
Yeah. The even from the very start of the movie, normally this type of movie starts with the kind of hope springs eternal and the young blood, and it sort of does that, shows Sheen getting off the helicopters. But even at the very start, there is a reality that hits him. He's kind of got the idealistic, I'm going to play my part kind of thing. I've given up college. I'm gonna
Yeah,
represent my country. But as he's coming off the helicopter, the bodies are getting carried on. Some
yeah,
of them are very badly maimed, and which again, I can't think of too many others that did it quite so bluntly at that stage. And also how ill-equipped he is at the start, and all of the people that are very green at the start, but how quickly they have forced to learn to have
yeah,
even survived the first tour and the first engagement, and how quickly they adapt and bring themselves into line, and to do that, as you quite rightly say, they kind of have to form these little cliques. Almost like to protect themselves around. They need to be able to see everybody in it. We had the clique of the black people there that were basically looking at the stupidity basically of the white men that are around them. Then it moves forward to Charlie Sheen's sort of uh, treating Berenger's character as almost like a deity. He's a god figure, and then flipping that background to seeing that he's actually the heart of evil in all of this, that he's broken beyond all measure at this stage, and in some ways has justified every action that he has made at this stage to the point because he's a survivor, and how that filters down to all of the other men. They're basically saying, like, we sort of know what he is, but he is still alive, and in doing so has a measure of both respect and also, you know, authority within that troop.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because a lot of the times when when one of their troops would get injured and stuff, they would go out of their way to save the injured soldier, even if they didn't like him, you know, in a
Mhm.
previous interaction. There was this thing about saving their fellow soldiers, and it's just, I find it ironic because they're saving the lives of basically, you know, killers who have killed other people, even some of the ones that have killed some innocent, uh, or maybe innocent villagers and stuff like that. And it's just it's interesting how the circumstances are portrayed so that the in the moment of the action you see these different levels of either heroism um, or cowardice, depending upon how they go about it, come out in these different characters, and it's just there was a lot of just a lot of exploration of all those different characters in those different situations, and it was amazing how Stone was able to bring these situations up so organically as the film went on and present this with these realities on the ground, so to speak.
Even when they find the bodies of their of fellow soldiers and they you start to feel this momentum of this kind of they're starting to feel out of control, that they're looking for someone to blame, they're looking for someone to take revenge on, they're
Yeah.
looking for someone to take their anger out on. And when they come in on the village and it starts really slowly and it starts to build and build, and that I think that was as impactful of it as it was because it built. You felt, you know, you kind of it started a little, just a little bit, and then it kind of got worse, and they start doing worse things, and well, just kill them. Well, let's just do this. Let's just do that, and it became this just, you know, out of control situation. So that was that was a tough watch.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And, and the young men at the different stages of their journey, whether they probably all started off in a different point in terms of morality, but the circumstances shifts their morality in various ways, depending on either how long they've been there. I sort of even get the feeling that Elias has sort of come full circle and that a bit like Charlie Sheen's character does in the end, in terms of like this hero worship, do what needs to be done, and then come out the far side and say, no, this is a war that we're in here. There are innocents within war. There are people that may be guilty, but you have to assess the situation rather than just blindly going in and treating everybody as the enemy, whether that's even within your own troop or faction, or whether it's kind of outside. Because there's no doubt, like the whole war was just it was just led to an awful lot of death on a lot of sides. You know, this it was not a war where, well, it was not a war that anybody won. In essence, everybody sort of lost at the end of it. It's an absolute tragic war in history, for that very idea, and the fact that they were just taking, everybody was being enlisted off the street. They weren't even soldiers; they were just young men. You know, they were just being
Yeah.
enlisted and brought and thrown out in that situation. So it wasn't that they chose a career in the military. It wasn't that they chose this. They were choosing because of ideals and belonging to your country and the kind of thing that I should represent my country. It was a kind of nationalist kind of ideal at that stage, and a very, you know, a very positive one on a lot of those men. But then when they get faced with the reality of the situation they were put in, you know, those how do you match what you went there for to what was actually happening to you? It's an almost impossible situation, and I do think that the film portrays that well in terms of not judging those young men. Like it just is their actions. Maybe in one circumstance really let them down, but actually, it wasn't that they were bad people necessarily. They were just kind of doing their next bit, and trying to survive. And there were points, there should have been checks and balances to put that in. But of course, their lead sergeant was an absolute, he was not a good leader. He let those things happen and manifest and grow. And you kind of see that slight irresponsibility in chain of command led to some of the further crimes further down the line.
Yeah. And then they were, when those further crimes happened, then they were called into question by the very same people who were sending him into those situations where those crimes happened. So it was, tough situation. I forget the name of the soldier who was there for a long time, and then who got reassigned a new duty at the end. He thought he was the one trying to get out. And I can't remember his name.
John McGinley's the actor from Scrubs.
Yeah. But he summed it up pretty well, because he was like, back in '65, we were all like, yeah, and then in 1967, we're like, oh no, that turnaround in his own viewpoint of what he was doing there was neatly expressed by his character, and I just that whole concept of shattered ideals really, really came forth with that.
And you touched on this being just a bunch of people who are being drafted off the street, and you kind of get that feeling too at the beginning when they talk about how the newer recruits are less valuable. So that if they die, it's not a big deal because they have very little value. Until they earn their keep and they prove themselves. It's kind of like, well, if this guy doesn't make it, then he's new, so it's not going to matter anyway. Like, it's no loss. Like, you'd rather keep someone who's experienced, you can count on, than someone new who you don't know what they can provide. So it's brutal.
Yeah, and you do get the feeling that in the chain of command, because of the kind of turnover of people, that when these atrocities happen and they're kind of talk about investigating and report them, they don't want them investigated, because what it might actually mean is that a court martial and losing experienced soldiers and that kind of stuff. So it's almost we'll look at that later. They don't really want to find out what that means, because realistically, those hardened veterans will just lead to more loss of life in terms of these young rookies that are coming in. They're needed to be kind of brought along, and again, I think that's very well portrayed within the film. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I'm still having trouble placing this film, like where I would want to put it in my top ratings here, because on some levels it was so hard to watch certain things about it, but on the other level, it's so well done. So I'm really like, uh, as far as objectively, I can see how good of a film it is. Subjectively, I don't think it's my favorite thing to watch ever. So, where would I put this one? This is tough.
It's sort of the same way. Like, I wouldn't have said this before I did this rewatch, but if somebody said to me Platoon is my favorite film of all time, I could completely understand that, because of kind of what it says and what it means and stuff. But as you say, it's such a difficult watch. And in fact, at a certain point, at certain points, I was like, I'm going to turn this off and kind of go on my memory of what the rest of the film is, because it was very distressing at times, and I definitely think this is a film that would be okay to watch parts of, occasionally, rather than kind of from start to finish, because that journey of what you're talking about kind of raises an awful lot of questions. The main one for me being, does Charlie Sheen shoot Burns' character at the end out of mercy or out of revenge? That's
Mm.
the thing we're not quite sure of, and in fact, does he even know? At the end is the sort of big question for me at the end of it, because he's a very changed person at the end of the film from the start. And then also the fact that it's a who's who of actors. Like, it's ridiculous the kind
Yeah.
of the talent that was involved in this from start to finish. Even very young Johnny Depp at one stage is like barely in it,
Yeah.
but kind of going through, and it's just it is impossible to place actually in a lot of ways because it's that objectiveness about quality of filmmaking versus something that you enjoyed. And I did enjoy it, but did I enjoy it more than many of the other ones that are up near the top? I'll tell you this: it's definitely better than Tom Jones.
But yeah, 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 definitely. As far as negatives go, I think I think this might be an unpopular opinion, but I felt like Charlie Sheen was the weak point as far as the actors go.
Interesting.
He don't I
Interesting.
don't feel like I don't know. There was moments when kind of felt like why did they cast him in this role? I mean, I think someone else may have carried that role better. He does have this innocence, this kind of he does play that part well, but there's some other parts, there's some other dialogue when he just sounds or when the narration portions, he just sounds like he's like soulless. I don't know. You just don't get the emotion out of him sometimes, and I felt like he was the weak point in the film.
Yeah, in some ways, I do agree with you on that point, Steve. But I do wonder whether his character being so soulless and so monotone and all that other stuff, he's sort of like an avatar for the person watching. You know, if he
Mm,
was too emotional one way or too much of a caricature another way, you wouldn't be able to really identify with him. Where he's sort of like an everyman to a certain extent. You know what I mean? That you kind of you don't know where he's going to go on it. But yes, I do agree, especially when you consider um, Defoe and Berenger, who are Defoe is, as usual, absolutely out of this world incredible in this film. I think his character Velasquez's portrayal is just unreal. Like that scene where the two of them confront each other, it's just in the eyes of Defoe. Like Charlie Sheen wasn't doing that part. That's for damn sure. And actually, funny, I didn't realize at the time, but when I was reading about it, actually, the fact that they were cast against type, both of them. So Defoe was cast as the good guy, and Berenger's
mm,
the bad guy.
Yeah.
Purposely so, to kind of play with people's expectations of those characters and that kind of stuff, especially within a war setting. And the fact that they both achieved nominations at the Oscar playing against type, which I thought
mm.
was, really, really clever casting and that kind of stuff. So, yeah. Yeah, I totally see your point in a lot of ways, Steve. And I can't even say I disagree with it because he's just kind of outshone by multitude of other actors. And even John C. McGinley's part, he's just so funny. His facial acting of when he's trying to get out of the last tour of duty when he gets the
Yeah.
second platoon at the end, it's hilarious. It's honestly really, really funny. And then Rua, there's just so many great performances, right? Keith David's brilliant in it. It's just
Mhm.
Yeah.
they are
Yeah. Keith David. Yeah.
really brilliant. Yeah, throughout the way through.
Yeah. Forrest Whitaker.
Yeah,
Yeah, Forest Whitaker.
So, yeah, there's a lot of actors in this one.
Roger Johnson.
It's kind of interesting. Mentioning the Charlie Sheen thing. I think there was a reason why Stone had Charlie Sheen's character as somebody who actually gave up schooling to actually join this, because he came, like a lot of the soldiers came from lower class families and lower class upbringings and stuff like that, and having his character be somebody who came from more of an affluent family, and he joined blindly out of this sense of duty and what have you, um, actually I think is a statement in and of itself by Stone to have that kind of character as your main character, your focus character, because he wanted to present this to the more affluent side of the American public as, um, kind of just shoving it in their face and saying, "Hey, this is what they went through. This is what they, it wasn't. There was no, there's no glory in this war." And I think that was, and of course was also part of the backlash to the film that was experienced at the time as well, because people didn't want to see that. They didn't want to see that the United States might not have been right to be in this war at the time, and that's more of an accepted fact nowadays. But it's definitely was a things we were still working through in the 80s and working and trying to come to grips with.
Yeah, and I actually wonder how much films like Platoon helped shape that argument by planting those ideas in people's
Yeah.
heads. I think it can never be underestimated, and obviously one of the reasons we talk about these films is the fact that we believe that art's very important in terms of helping us think and
Yeah.
and
Right.
and, and, and examine other points of view, etc. Whether that's through books, films, music, whatever you're doing. And so when a film like Platoon wins the Oscar, is very commercially successful, it's not necessarily about the action that happens in it. It's the things that you take away with a month later, a week later, when you kind of go,
Yeah.
as you say, like the idea that Sheen's character was put in as somebody, a college kid that came out and went in and seen that, because I think it's easy. Like I remember watching the film before, and especially this time, and going, well, obviously these are 17-year-old boys. I was freaking useless myself as 17-year-olds. You know what I mean? They're gonna make. They're gonna
Yeah.
react emotionally. They're gonna do. This is completely normal, but actually showing people from different socio-economic backgrounds and doing that means that everybody has this sort of a way in, and it's back to that the conversation that we're having much more recent years, that representation is very important in movies, is the fact that you can sort of disassociate yourself with something if you don't think that you see yourself on the screen or see yourself or your circumstances represented on the screen, whereas this absolutely tried its best to kind of do it from multiple points of view and create new perspectives into what is a genre, the Vietnam War film, that have been done many, many, many times beforehand,
Yeah, I was doing some searching of why Platoon won, and one of the answers that I got was Platoon won Best Picture because it didn't try to explain Vietnam; it confessed it. It forced audiences to confront the moral wreckage of the war, not just the violence.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it did it way better than Deer Hunter.
Oh, Deer Hunter! Oh, massive. I hate Deer
Yeah,
Hunter.
but there are definitely similarities about the kind of the socioeconomic kind of angle that they're going for. They try to do it more as cultural, that kind of Slavic thing, and, and,
Mhm.
and kind of small town kind of USA, that putting that in the war, whereas they based this all in Vietnam. It was all right there,
Yeah.
in the jungle, and what happened to people in the jungle at that stage, and incredibly effective and powerful, and yeah, an
Yeah.
excellent movie, I have to say.
Yeah. And I think the shattered ideals of the characters reflected the shattered ideals of the public about the war itself. And I think that's what Stone was trying to get across.
Yeah, yeah, very. It's a tough one. I would say it's probably a little bit outside the top 10, 10 to 15. I haven't placed it yet, but just you know
Yeah.
around there.
Um. uh, yeah. It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, I have no idea. I could place it as high as 2. I could place it as low as 12. It's
Yeah,
it's sort of, yeah, it's that kind of film of, you know, it's a very well made, effective film, but is it kind of a staple of him running about going, geez, films you should watch, the greatest films of all time? Watch Platoon. Yeah, it's great. You'll feel good at the end of that. That's not that film.
it's a real feel good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned Charlie Sheen's character having to shoot Barnes at the end.
Yeah.
And that is that is contrasted by the earlier shooting of Barnes shooting Elias. Um, and you got to
Mm.
wonder uh, how that, that just the mental process that was going through both of those characters' heads when they did those shootings. Like Chris, you mentioned that was Sheen putting this guy out of his misery um, by actually finally finishing him off. Um, and you also mentioned that this guy, he had this God complex as well. And it's, and when they first get there, they kind of worship this guy because of what he's done and what he's been through and how he's, portrayed as this super soldier almost. And the, that's just Sheen shooting him just represents the taking down of that mantle of this idea of this super soldier who can do it all in the field. And you had Barnes shooting Elias, which was kind of the last gasp of the good soldier, so to speak. And it was it just thinking about how that all played out really, it really gets you going in how the the relationships of the characters and the characters are mirrored in the relationship of the situation that they're in, and it really pretty good stuff, really.
Yeah. And also how the bullet gets everybody. You know what I mean? Everybody's sort of
Right.
susceptible to go the same way,
Mhm.
you know, and this has been done many times actually in Vietnam films and war films beforehand. But the fact that the people who survived was a lot down to luck rather than necessarily about, you know, circumstance, ability, quality, all of that kind of stuff. Like that they've
Yeah.
been involved in two major tours. They got out, and other people kind of got re-enlisted and all this kind of stuff. It was really a roll of the dice in terms of who got to go home, and the people that got to go home obviously very changed and harmed by the whole experience. You know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it is a little it guts you at the end when the people who survive are like, "Well, like, I get to some R&R, right? Like, I get a break." It's like, "No, you're off to the next one." Like, there's no celebration, there's no, "Oh, we made it out alive, let's hang out, let's take some time off." There's no, here's your new here's your new group, good luck. It's
Yeah.
just on
Yeah.
to the next one. Just this grinder of, it's awful.
John C. McGinley's face at the end, honestly, it's such a great way to finish the movie, and in a lot of ways, is just kind of hanging on his face, going, "Huh,"
Yeah, I
like
know.
getting this promotion, you know what I mean, and getting charged with these men. But no, the reality of what that means kind of hits home to him. And he's like, "Oh no, it's love the end of it." Yeah,
And I also like that he survives because it seemed telegraphed that he was like, "I have a bad feeling about this one. I really wanna go. I have a bad feeling." So I'm glad that he survived because it would have been a little too I think
well,
that it made the ending a little bit more, uh,
he survived that
re
one.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that one, yeah, that day. So, yeah, it's definitely up there in the ranking.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely glad I saw it. Again, I have a new appreciation for it. Definitely.
Yeah. So, I'm guessing that we all enjoyed it at least, or I mean, enjoy we use the term enjoy, loosely, but you know what I mean. We
I
appreciated it.
appreciate. Yeah, yeah, that's the one.
So, I'm not too familiar with the runners up that year, but nothing really stands out, just glancing.
Interestingly, though, it's actually Oliver Stone's second film of the year. In fact, he was a writer in another one, but he also released Salvador that year with James Woods, which I have seen,
Mm,
which is set in, I believe, is it like Nicaragua, something like that. It kind of takes another conflict. He's a reporter, and it's a very good watch. If you ever get the
mm.
chance to see Salvador, that that Stone wrote and directed that year. He's very prolific around that time, as we probably know, and he's a hell of a filmography. Like, there's no doubt.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
What was the other one? A Room with a View? Is that
Children
I
of a
remember
Lesser God, Anna and Her Sisters, The Mission, and A Room with a View.
I've
okay?
seen The Mission, and Hannah's sister's obviously Woody Allen. So,
Woody Allen. Yeah,
um,
that's right. Yeah,
yeah,
I
Yeah.
think I've seen A Room with a View.
Did you guys spot the Oliver Stone cameo in Platoon?
No, no, I
Yeah,
didn't.
he's, calling out orders. It's a
all right,
30
okay.
second, and then they get blown up. Uh, they get killed. But, I mean, he doesn't stand out as much. He's not as bad as someone like Tarantino who tries to act in their movies. So, there's always that.
There's From Dusk Till Dawn, Hate. Oh my God, there we go.
Oh, man. He's awful. But, so, yeah, the 1986, Platoon, 1987, The Last Emperor.
Mm.
Oh.
Bernardo Bertolucci. Yeah.
It's been a
Indeed, I have
long
seen that.
time.
I think last year I watched Last Emperor, so it'll be it's a long one though.
Yeah, I think it's long runtime.
Yeah. Interesting.
Have not seen that one.
Yeah.
I believe it's a long. Let's see. It is.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
it's
like 3
2
hours
hours
long if I
43.
remember.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's
a little
nearly 3
short of
hours.
3 hours. So
Yeah.
the
That's
director's
good.
cut is almost 4.
Oh,
The
well,
theatrical
I'll watch
is
that one then.
yeah. Jeez, 4 hours. So, but the theatrical cut is 2 hours 43. So
What will be interesting for those that do watch the theatrical cut, 2 hours 43, maybe you come away from it going, I wish it was longer. You know, that would be a first for the conversations. Never know.
I don't recall one movie we've seen that we said, well, that was over 2 hours. There's other ones when I wished it was longer, but they were all
Mhm.
under 2 hours. Anything over 2 hours is like, okay, that's enough.
Yeah.
Well, certainly The Godfather, I wouldn't mind if that was longer.
Well, I don't know. I think it's appropriate length.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
appropriate, but,
I
you know,
think I think as a blanket statement, every movie that's ever been made and successful could always been a little shorter.
it's true. Yeah, cut
Probably.
some fat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
At least for a
Godfather.
first watch.
yeah.
Godfather's perfect. It's number one.
Mm.
Mm,
I know people don't like The Godfather. It's that's the thing.
hmm, yeah. I mean, I think it's a specific the genre I can see people not enjoying, just
Mm.
the mafia brutality, the, ruthlessness, I can see people not being a fan of. No, it's fine. I can see that.
Yeah.
What do
Cool.
they know?
Yeah, but so, yeah, on to 1987, The Last Emperor next time. So, until next time, Chris, where can people find you?
Yeah, people can find me at my channel, Chris Mohan. They can find me on Speculative Speculations, the sci-fi book podcast. They can find me on patreon.com.
And Jared.
You can find me at the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel, and you can also find me with Chris on Speculative Speculations. And you can find me on Panel Chewing for Pick of the Week.
Yes. Yeah, you can find me at pagechewing.com. Easiest place to find me and come by and say hello. So thanks for listening. Hope everyone, whoever's watching or watching along with us, hopefully you're enjoying the conversations, and we thank you for listening as always. So until next time, we will talk to everyone very soon.